Apache's Corner, we're going to look at solving one-step inequalities. So an inequality, if you remember, has these symbols, right? It has a less than, has a greater than, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to. So we're going to go through those again today. I know you learned this in middle school at some point. So it says to graph the inequalities. Graph the solution set y is less than or equal to 4. So that's any number that is 4 or less. So if we make this 0, then we have 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to use a closed circle because that includes the 4, and then all values to the left are less than or equal to 4. Okay, moving on, we have y is greater than 1/2. Now this one's a little bit different because it doesn't say greater than or equal to 1/2. So we're going to use an open circle. So this is going to be my 1/2 here. I'm going to do an open circle, and that is pointing to the right. All values that are greater than 1/2, such as 1 or 2 or 7, they go to the right. Okay, now we're going to do the opposite. We're actually going to write an inequality. So we have x. Now this is an open circle, and it's to the left. So that's going to be less than 1.4. And then we have x. This is -10, right? And everything is going to the right. So all these values are greater than, and that's going to be equal to because that's a closed circle. So we have x is greater than or equal to -10. All right, so now we're going to do some solving. So again, just like an equation, like if you had this equation, you would want to get x by itself. We're going to do the same thing except for an inequality. So there's my wall. I'm going to add 10 to both sides. Then I have x is less than 25. So when I graph, I'm just going to put a 0 because so I know where the 0 is, and 25 would be somewhere to the right. So I'm going to have an open circle to the left. Okay, looking at the next one and try it 3, I'm going to add 9 to both sides. And I have b is less than or equal to 25. So I'm going to have a 0 here. I'm going to have my 25 kind of wherever I want there. And this is a closed circle, right? Because I'm including 25 with that less than or equal sign. So that would include 25 as my answer. But in the previous example right here, because it's open, I would not include 25. All right, as we keep going, again, I'm going to subtract 24. Again, I'm still trying to get x by itself. So I have x is greater than or equal to 37. So again, I have my 0 somewhere, and then I have 37. Closed circle to the right because 37 and all numbers greater than 37 are part of my solution set. Okay, let's look at the next one. I'm going to bring 13 to the other side. Again, trying to get x by itself. So I have 75 is less than x. Now, it's always easier to graph when you put the variable on the left-hand side. It's just a little bit more consistent with what you're trying to do. So when I went from this step to that step, notice here I'm pointing to the 75. I'm still pointing to the 75. So I'm going to have my 0. And I'm going to have my 75. Now, when I have my x to the left, that arrow is always going to be pointing in the direction where the line's going. So I have an open circle to the right because that is pointing to the right. Okay. Now we're going to combine. And we're going to do maybe adding, maybe subtracting. We're going to see how things go. So here's my wall. Okay. This time I want my variables on one side. So I'm going to bring that 9y to the other side. And I have 3 is greater than or equal to y. So again, I'm going to switch that. I'm going to put my y in the left, put my 3 in the right. I'm pointing to the y. I stay pointing to the y. So I have 0 here, and then I have 3 there. That's a closed circle because I'm including 3 as part of my solution set to the left. Okay, we're going to keep going. Bring my 7x to the other side. And I have 6 is less than x, or x is greater than 6. So I have a 0 here, 6 somewhere there. I have an open circle to the right. Okay, now let's look at some word problems. We have Elisa has read approximately 1/4 of a novel. So I did a reminder here that when you see the word of in a word problem in math, it means multiply. If she has read at least 112 pages, how many pages are there in a novel? Okay, so let's take a look and see what we have. Write and solve an inequality. So I'm going to say 1/4 of the novel. I'll use N for the novel. She has read at least 112. So that's 112 or more. How many pages are there in the novel? Well, to get n by itself, I can either divide by 1/4 or multiply both sides by the reciprocal, which is 4, just like you did with the equations, right? The rules are the same. So this gives me n is greater than or equal to 448. So what does that mean? It means there are at least 448 pages in the novel. Right? Could be 448, could be 450, 475. All right, let's look at the next one. For every hour X, so X stands for every hour, that Eva's electric car charges, she can drive the car for 7.5 miles. Okay? Eva needs to drive at least 60 miles tomorrow. All right, so in this one, I like to say, like, kind of what's your end game there? She has to drive at least 60 miles tomorrow. So 60 miles, whatever's going on here has to be greater than or equal to 60. Well, X is the number for every hour that she charges it, she can drive 7.5 miles. So we're going to have to take 7.5 miles and we're going to have to multiply it by the number of hours that it's charged. Okay? And solving that, again, I'm going to divide both sides by 7.5. So let me get rid of that, get my X by itself. So divide both sides by 7.5. And we have X is greater than or equal to 8. So Eva, if she's going to go that 60 miles or more, needs to charge her car for 8 or more hours. Okay, so the first step wanted you to write an inequality, which we did, and then we actually did part B right there. What's the least amount of hours? It has to be 8 would be the least amount of hours or more. Okay. All right, looking at the next one, just as a reminder, when you multiply or divide a negative number, you must change the direction of the sign. Change the direction of the inequality sign. Some teachers say flip. Just make sure you're changing the direction of the sign. All right, so let's start with example 8. Example 8 here. I just want to get that X by itself. So I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal, both sides by 3. So this is going to simplify. So if X is less than or equal to negative 36, and that's it. Now, I'm allowed to have a negative number in my answer. It's just if the operation is a negative when I'm multiplying or dividing, that's when I'm going to change the direction of the sign. All right, the next one, again, I like to multiply by the reciprocal, or you can divide. So I can multiply both sides by negative 5 over 2. Again, I multiply by a negative, so I'm going to change the direction of that sign. The left-hand side, everything's going to simplify, and I'm left with X. On the right-hand side, I'm left with negative 55 over 2. Or if you want to make that a decimal, it's negative 27.5. So either one is okay. All right, let's look at the next example. I'm going to divide everything by negative 13. And again, I just divided, so I'm going to change the direction of the sign. My X is there. 117 divided by negative 13 gives me negative 9. So that's okay. Or I like to put my variables on left-hand side. So I'm going to put X to the left and 9 to the right. I'm pointing to the X, so I'm going to say pointing to the X. So either one is okay. Either way is okay. All right, let's try a couple more. Again, I want to get the X by itself. So I can multiply both sides by negative 5. Negative 5 here gives me negative 70. Again, I'm going to change the direction of the sign because I multiply by a negative number, X. Or I can say X is less than negative 70. Okay, keep going. Now this time, if I want, I can divide by 2/3, or I can multiply by this reciprocal either way. X is less than, right? That was a positive number, so that's going to stay in the same direction. And that's going to give me either negative 15 over 2, or I can say X is less than negative 7.5. Either one is okay. All right, and our last one, again, divide both sides by 8. That's a positive number, so I'm going to leave that there. So X is greater than or equal to 3 over 2, or X is greater than or equal to 1.5. All right, let's do some translations. We're going to do a little bit more of this with the next section, but let's see what we have some for now. 7 more than a number. Now, you did this with equations before. 7 more than a number is less than negative 18. I like to read that back. Okay, 7 more than a number is less than or equal to negative 18. Now it wants us to solve it. So I'm going to bring the 7 to either side, and I have X is less than negative 25. Okay, 20 less than a number 20 less than a number, I can use any variable I want, is at least 15. So 15 or greater is at least 15. Okay, so now again, I'm going to get my variable by itself. So I'm going to add 20 to both sides. And I end up with n is greater than or equal to 35. All right, we'll keep going. 1/8 of a number. Remember, we talked about earlier in this lesson that of means times. 1/8 of a number is less than or equal to 3. Okay, I'm going to solve it. I'm going to multiply both sides by 8. And I have n is less than or equal to 24. Okay, 12 times a number, negative 12 times a number, it says. So negative 12 times a number, I can use x this time, is no more than 84. So 84 would be the highest value that it would be. Again, I'm going to solve. So I'm going to divide both sides by negative 12. Remember, when I multiply or divide by a negative number, I have to change the direction of the sign. 84 divided by negative 12 gives me negative 7. And there's my final answer. Okay, thanks so much for stopping by today. You have a great day.